Hi, it's Ethan again, and this is going to be the second part of the 10-part tutorial series that I'm doing on how to make games in Unity. So, starting off from the first part of the tutorial, nothing has really changed between then and now. So, there's still just a square that's in the scene view, and just to overview what happened in the last video. I introduced the main parts of the interface in Unity. So on the left, there's the hierarchy, which contains all the objects in the game. On the bottom is the project window, which contains all your assets like scripts and textures and prefabs. And on the right is the inspector window, which contains properties and components of the object that you selected. So in this video, I'm going to be teaching you how to create a boulder rolling down a hill, and it's going to hit some boxes in the way. So what's going to happen is we're going to have to create some physics objects which are going to interact with one another in different ways. So to start with, we're going to need to make a boulder. And for now, the boulder is going to be just a circle with no texture, because making a texture really does need its own video to justifiably explain it. So for this video, we are going to make a circle and then a hill for the circle to roll down, and then some boxes for the circle to hit on the way down. So to start with, I'm going to be deleting this square because we don't need this square for now. We just need a boulder. So to start with, let's create a boulder. So if I'm going to right click in the hierarchy. I'm going to go down to 2D objects, and then I'm going to go to sprites, and then I'm going to left click on circle. So now we can see we've built a circle that is now in the scene view, and we can move it around. We can resize it, rotate it, just like we can with the square. And for now, I'm going to leave it at this 1 by 1 by 1 scale. So this is a fine size for now. And then let's start talking about how to change the color of things in Unity. So in Unity, there's a very simple way to change the color of really basic objects like circles, squares, hexagons. And all you have to do is you have to go into the inspector window for the object you've selected, and then look at the components. So the first component we have is the transform component. This is again about position, rotation, and scale. So the place in the world or relative to another object if it's a child of an object, which I'll explain in the future. Uh, and the second one is rotation, which is obviously just how it rotated. This is a circle, so it's not very easy to tell how it rotated, but its rotation does matter for a lot of things like shooters. And the last one is scale. So if I change the scale of x to be 2 instead of 1, you can see that our little circle has stretched in the horizontal direction. So the x direction is horizontal, the y direction is up and down, and the z direction is actually not technically visible in this view. So we are creating a 2D Unity project, but that doesn't mean that there aren't free axes for objects to be in. So there's actually a cool way to view the third dimension, even though we're in Unity 2D. And all you have to do is click this button. So this button should say 2D right now. And when you hover over it, there's a tooltip that says that when you click on it, you're gonna go into the 3D view. So let's just click on this for now. And you're gonna notice that the camera immediately has drastically changed. There's a whole grid now. We can look up and down. So if you hold right click, you can pan the camera. If you hold middle click, you can move the camera entirely. And I'm going to turn to face our circle, and I'm going to just zoom in with the scroll wheel. So here we are. And if you look at it, it's just a plane. Like it has no depth. It's just a sprite, a 2D sprite with absolutely no size in the z dimension. So the z dimension in the context of Unity 2D is always like going in and out of the relative to the screen, if that makes sense. So for now, let's go back to 2D view, since we're not really going to be messing around with 3D with deferred axes. So now that we have this circle, let's change the x scale back down to 1. So now it's just a circle again. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to want to change the color. So we can look at the sprite render component over here, and there's a property that just says color. So this is very simple. You just click on the color. For now it's white by default. We can change it to something else, another color that we want. So let's say dark gray. So now, so the color wheel, I mostly just change it by holding left click over here and it's just selecting color that looks good. So let's say dark gray. And if you look over here, I kind of made it harder to see. There you go. So now it's like dark gray, dark black, something like that. So now that we've changed the color of our circle, which is going to be a boulder in the future, let's add a hill for our boulder to slide down. So to do that, I'm going to go back into the hierarchy. I'm going to right click. And we're going to go back into 2D objects, sprites, and then a square. So now we have a square again. But this is not a very effective hill. We really do need the hill to be slanted so that we can have our boulder fall onto the hill and then start sliding down from gravity. So first off, I'm going to want to make this square longer so that there's actually some distance for the boulder to slide down. So I'm going to deselect it for now, and if you look at the top left, you'll see a variety of tools. There's a hand tool, move tool, rotate tool, scale tool, and rect tool. So the rect tool is a sort of multifunction tool. When you select an object of it, you can drag the corners. You can drag the corners to scale an object however you want it like that. So, and this doesn't just work on squares; it works on the circle too. So if I hold left click and drag on the corners of this circle, I can like resize it to whatever I want. So I'm going to Control Z to undo those changes, and I'm going to make this square just really long, so like that long. And if we go into the game view, which is up here, so I'm going to left click here, the square is now taking up the entirety of our camera space, and that's fine for now. So I'm going to go back into the scene view, and I'm going to want to rotate the square so that the boulder can slide down it. So I'm going to select the rotation tool, and then I'm going to just move it. I'm just going to rotate it. So I'm just holding left click and dragging to rotate. I'm going to select the move tool. I'm going to click this middle box right here, which is how you can freely rotate it. If you want to rotate it only in one axis, you can drag either of the arrows. So now I have this square here. If we go into the game view, yeah, that looks fine. That looks like a very respectable hill for us. I don't want this empty space to be empty, so I'm going to fill it up by changing back to the Rect tool, and then I'm going to drag on the edge here, right? And then boom, just like that. So now if we go back into the game view, now it actually looks like a hill that our boulder, our little circle is going to be falling down. So, but if we click play to start the game, something that you'll notice is that nothing is happening yet. And that's because we don't have any physics components on it. So, one of the absolute most common and vital parts of almost any video game made in Unity are going to be two components: the rigid body and the collider. So, the rigid body component is going to be something that gives our game objects physics. So, things like mass and drag and torque and velocity. That's what the rigid body is going to do. Is going to give our component. It's basically going to bring it alive and make the physics engine enact on it. So first, let's select our circle again. Our boulder. Let's go to Add Component. Click here, and then we're going to search rigid. So RIGID. And since this is a 2D game, we're going to be selecting rigid body 2D. And right away, you'll see that it's been added to the inspector, and we can change things as we like, but for now we're going to leave all these values alone. And we're also going to want to add a collider to it. Now, a collider is what's going to determine basically the size of the object in the game. So a collider is going to be able to have the ability to detect other colliders and detect when a mouse is hovering over it or when a mouse is clicked it. So that's what a collider does. The collider is basically the invisible outline of an object's existence. Basically, like, I'm not explaining it very well here, but I think it should be relatively easy to understand, intuitive to understand once you see it. So I clicked Add Component again. I've searched for a box. I'm going to select a box collider 2D. Wait, no, sorry. This is a circle. So I'm going to search for circle collider 2D. There we go. So now, if I scroll in, zoom in, you'll see a green outline, and that green outline is the circle collider of the circle. So when a circle hits another object that it can collide with, uh, it will roll on this green outline. So you can see that there's the rectangle outline over here. That's not what's going to be colliding with other objects. It's going to be the green outline. So that green outline is now the collider of our boulder. Now I'm going to do the exact same for our hill. So right now our hill is looking kind of plain. I'm going to go back to the sprite render and go into color and then change that color to something like a brown. Something like that. So go into the game view. Yeah, so that looks about fine. It's a bit drab, but we'll be changing the textures in the future. So now I am going to give the same components to our hill. So add component rigid. So I just type rigid body 2D. I'm going to add component again. I'm going to select. Now this is a square, so I'm going to be searching up for box collider. So box collider 2D. So now we have those two components. So if we click the run the play game, something interesting is going to happen, and because it's just going to fall, they're both just going to fall to the ground, and that's because our hill is influenced by gravity, and we don't really want that. We want our hill to stay in place, but our boulder, our circle, to fall and slide down. So what we're going to do in this case is we're going to go to body type. So we're in an inspector, we go down to a rigid body 2D component, and we're going to look at body type. So there are three body types in Unity: dynamic, kinematic, and static. Dynamic means that this object is going to be affected by things like gravity, by drag, by other physics objects, by other rigid bodies with colliders. So we don't want our hill to be affected or to move, really. So we want to set it to static. So now, if we click play game, the hill is not moving, but our ball is. And that's because by default, our ball is dynamic. So that means the ball is affected by other objects with rigid body 2D, and it's affected by gravity and drag. So now, we've created a ball and a hill, and they're both colored, and they have physics. So when we click play, we can watch our little boulder roll down a hill. Thank you for watching.